We are live. Hello and welcome to Eastern Marshlands. My name is Eugene, and this is Bolshevik Bistro, where I sit down with people and chat about some leftist stuff. And tonight we have a very special guest. He is a host of a show Spicy Takes on Zero Books. It's Badman Massive. Hello, Badman Massive. What's up?
Hey Eugene, how are you? An absolute pleasure to be on.
So we're here to basically talk about all sorts of stuff that's happening now in Britain, because there are some news about like the vote of no confidence that failed recently, almost succeeded, by the way, in the British
Almost,
Parliament,
yeah.
and there is a bunch of stuff that is happening around Brexit, and we're here basically to chat about it and to figure out how did it happen, why are we here, and is left doing enough, and what's with the yellow vest in Britain and stuff like that. So
Sure.
um, let's start with Brexit. Like, could you please explain me how the hell is it possible that UK all of a sudden just left EU?
Yeah. So it's an interesting one, I guess. Like you mentioned a little bit earlier when we spoke before you went live, you were talking about how it's such a thin margin, and it doesn't really seem like a demand that's being expressed by the majority of people in the UK or whatever. It's like a tiny margin. But I would say, so where I live in London, like most media yuppies or whatever. So like I
Mm-hmm.
have a nice kind of insular middle class community of people that are completely opposed to and anti-Brexit or whatever. I think you're probably familiar with the type, like vaguely left of liberal types or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
But their hearts are kind of in the right place, largely in favor of free movement of people, and largely opposed to their mates getting kicked out of the country that they're already in or whatever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and those are all legitimate concerns. But then on the other side of the coin, you have the rest of the country, like maybe for different reasons, but I guess the majority of the yes votes, well, or a lot of them at least, would have come from working class communities up north, who kind of feel like the status quo is not really giving them, not really giving them much. They've been kind of screwed for decades now at this point since Thatcher, and like left with very little other kind of options, like opportunities to have any kind of political power or to make any change whatsoever. So they decide to take their chance and leave a political union that they see as largely useless to their affairs or whatever. If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's like
Uh-huh.
of course a leftist critique of Europe. Like I'm sure you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
Um,
And I wanted to, you know, it's a pleasure to have you on, because there was a very interesting tweet that I've seen earlier this morning, I believe, by your fellow Londoner, Paul Joseph Watson.
oh
And
yeah, yeah. My buddy, isn't it? My boy.
yeah, our boy, Paul Joseph Watson. And he said that the left keeps attacking working class for voting for Brexit, and they have abandoned the working class forever. What's your take on that? Like, how
Well,
accurate is his
you
assessment?
know what? Like, am I allowed to drop the C bomb on here? Like, I want to say outright that
You're
Paul
allowed to.
Joseph Watson is a cunt. Like, but even the stop clock is right twice a day, and he kind of has a point there.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
in terms of Brexit, the left's orientation should always be towards the working class in general. Like, we're obviously
Mm-hmm.
not in every instance, working class people make correct tactical decisions. But something like Brexit is kind of unclear. Like it was posed
Right.
by and advocated for the far right, but there is left wing reasons why working people might gravitate towards leaving the EU. Like that's why it's a populist demand. That's why it kind of works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like we shouldn't be calling every Brexit voter like gammon faces or fucking idiots or whatever, because it's a complex kind of issue, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like
I agree.
if we're going to lay down some of the problems straight off the bat about like what is problematic about the EU, is that from the perspective of someone living in Britain, it's kind of undemocratic, isn't it?
Yeah,
There's
it's
like a
very undemocratic.
yeah, like this kind of technocracy that you kind of vaguely interact with on the basis of European elections that are somewhat distinct from your own domestic elections, and like it isn't
Mm-hmm.
democratic, and it is also the main kind of driving force behind, or it would seem to be the main driving force behind neoliberal austerity. Like
Right.
if you look at what happened in Greece, or if you look at Ireland at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
it's like a lot of the driving force of that is like literally being enforced by diktats from the EU, isn't it?
It
And
is.
yeah, and like, so on the one hand, we have to say that like I'm fucking in the situation right now where I might be living in a country, in a city that's going to have food shortages because we do Brexit. But then on the other side of the coin, like there is an idea in there, like, you know, there is a reason why this populist demand like kind of rose to prominency, and we should kind of pay attention to that as well, I think. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I would agree with you.
Paul Joseph Watson is right about that, right? But what's important for me is like, you know, the job of the left is not to just follow kind of populist thought or whatever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like the left is an organized working class, as one of my mates loves to say over and over again. Beautiful quote.
It is actually a very interesting quote. I remember you've mentioned it on Spicy Takes once, and that was the first time I've heard such a definition that is so precise. It's just organized working class, because it assumes that working class is organized on the basis of class, right? And it acts in the interests of the class interests.
I think that's correct. Like you could say, like, and I'm sure a lot of liberals and, you know, pseudo leftists might argue that like the left is a series of kind of values or whatever. That's kind of the way politics has gone in a contemporary sense, I feel. But no, like for me, it's about advocating for the needs and interests of the working class. Now the question is, does every working class person always get it right every time? No, obviously we would have chopped their fucking heads off ages ago if we were able to organize easily.
Yeah, I agree. And I remember, if we bring up an example of like big mistakes and big stumbles in terms of revolutionary actions, and the reaction of the left intellectuals, the leaders of the philosophers and leftist thinkers. I remember after, I don't remember who that was precisely, but after May 68, there was an interview with one of the philosophers, or one of the like semi-leaders of the movement, and they were asked a very important question, because the figure of this person is really not important. It was more of a comment on French working class. The question was, do you blame the French workers for not organizing well enough to take over the power during May 68 events? And what the person said, he interrupted the interviewer and said, "No, I am never putting my own opinions and above. No one in this world is allowed to say anything, put any judgment on the working class, because working class does what it does. Like, working people do what they do, and there are reasons for that, and it's not in our power to impose our like opinions or negative like judgments on them. Of course, we could be critical of that, but we are not judges of the workers here, right?"
Yeah. Well, like I guess that's certainly true for the media class. Like I think they should reserve their judgment, and they should follow heel to the needs and interests of the working class. But I'd say there's a good chance me and you are allowed to be as Bolshevik as we like, really, isn't it? Because I don't know about you, like, but I'm just some nobody who lives in London, you know what I mean, and works shitty jobs, goes to the supermarket, and enjoys a nice Sunday trip to IKEA on this particular Sunday. Like,
we live simple lives, and we enjoy them.
like luckily for us, the definition of class is open enough that it largely includes nearly everybody, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree.
I think one of the problems is that our media institutions aren't really controlled by that class. So that's where we get dictated to from above, isn't it?
And I remember talking about the media, and that will perfectly put us in the next point of discussion I want to talk about. The British media is like the major newspapers and news organizations are controlled by private institutions, obviously, and they are
Robert Murdoch,
Robert Murdoch, literally one guy, almost exclusively controls the media.
Horrible Australian billionaire, that's what I mean.
Yeah. So, and I remember seeing a very interesting study that was looking through the way Jeremy Corbyn is portrayed by the media, and they found out that in 90% of the mentions of Jeremy Corbyn in the biggest British newspapers were basically lies about him.
Yeah.
And lies about his policy. And I believe the Daily Mail managed to get 0% accuracy on portrayal of his policy. Every single time they mentioned that, they never managed to say anything that is like what he wants to do.
Oh.
I read such an amazing pieces of fan fiction by the British media about how the Maoist Jeremy Corbyn is going to destroy the Britain, and the rich are going to leave. They will buy one-way tickets out of Britain and never come back.
Jesus, I wish that was the Jeremy Corbyn that we were.
And when we were talking about this interview, you mentioned that you were extremely disappointed in Jeremy Corbyn, that he doesn't do what he not only has to do to actually perpetuate the left and help the working class, but actually is able to do now.
Yes.
Well, could you please comment on that a bit?
Yeah. I suppose it's kind of like an interesting time to be talking about this stuff, with the 100-year anniversary of the death of Rosa Luxemburg or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So we always know that democratic socialists are murderers, they killed Rosa or whatever. So they're always going to be wankers.
Yeah, they are.
But obviously, as a leftist, as a communist, you have to be excited about someone like Jeremy Corbyn. I joined the Labour Party to vote for him.
Mm-hmm.
I care about what Momentum is doing to help push him and re-democratize the Labour Party. And yeah, it would really take some of the fucking strain off, to be honest, if we had a Labour government headed by him.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess my problem is not really with him. It's with parliamentarism as a kind of a specific approach, really, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because what he's doing is great. He's in terms of negotiating a deal for Brexit, he's pushing super hard to make sure that a no-deal Brexit is one of the things taken off the table.
Right.
I'm not sure if you're, the people watching.
Could you explain that? Because this is the thing that I've seen him talk about a lot, and I sort of understand what the no deal and why he wants to drop, quote unquote, the no deal. But could you please explain what that exactly means?
The worst thing is no deal is exactly what it sounds like. It is not negotiating any kind of relationship with the European Union at all, outside of Britain is out and the EU is its own thing. That is an absolute disaster for Britain. My friend Anthony loves to point out that the United Kingdom has no deep water ports. So I think our nearest one is in Holland.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
no deep water ports at all?
Not to the scale that we could build our economy around it. They did a little test with those trucks at a port in Wales or whatever, and it was a logistical nightmare, a failure. They paid hundreds of truckers to do this experiment or whatever, and it was a disaster. And it's even if in a crude logistical sense, the idea of the locomotion of our foods and products and consumer goods and commodities that we need is under threat, that is going to be horrible to live in. Yeah. So a no deal Brexit would probably create something like that. Yeah. So I just can't think about it. Britain, a country like the Britannia, the rule the seas thing, right? Yeah. Doesn't have stuff to build big ships to transport fucking goods around. Not to the degree that we need, anyway. I think there is one in Wales, but not to the
right
degree that we need. And they cost billions to make, and it takes a long time.
It's just that it makes sense because of European Union, but now all of a sudden, we have to do something about it, right?
Yeah. And because of the way it's evolved, is normally you don't kind of cease all relations with all of your closest neighbors at once. It's a ridiculous idea in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
There is actually a interesting question from the chat from Stephen Wilson. How likely would you say United Ireland is after Brexit? So is it likely that Northern Ireland will secede from United Kingdom?
I don't know. That's a tough call. That would be an ideal situation, wouldn't it?
Because I've heard that there was a car bombing in Northern Ireland a couple of days ago. The first one since 2017.
But it doesn't surprise me that tensions are rising. I hear from my friends and family at home that is the case, and I can even in the UK, obviously, unfortunately for us, Northern Ireland is in the UK.
Yeah.
But in England, where I live, there is like a rise in anti-Irish sentiment, not to the degree of any other kind of ethnic groups or minorities, but it's noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel it. So, like, I'd love to pose a dream scenario where like Britain fucks itself up by leaving the EU, everything goes to shit, and I just move back to a united Ireland and it's all good. Like,
So you're originally from Ireland?
oh yeah, I'm from the west coast of Ireland originally. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Like most of my generation, I emigrated to this country to find work and not have a sucky life.
Yeah.
But and like many Irish generations before me, I suppose. But yeah, so that issue is quite close to my heart. Like, I'd like to see United Ireland. I think Brexit is more likely to spur on like a kind of hyper nationalism in Britain,
Mm-hmm.
and they're unlikely to let go of that, even though nobody wants Northern Ireland, not even the Republic. Like, do you know what I mean? But pain in the ass, isn't it? But yeah, like, it's certainly interesting. Like, I don't know what's going to happen there. It's really unclear. I know that if we had a Brexit of a different sort, like headed by a Labour government, with like a political mandate that was like that they have, with the working people in the north of England and
Right.
like a majority of their base at the moment. Yeah, we could see something different. We the British media constantly throwing shit at Jeremy Corbyn for being an IRA sympathiser, which he most certainly isn't. But
Yeah.
he does have an understanding of that struggle, and that particular the complications of that situation. And under the terms of the Good Friday Agreement, it wouldn't be ridiculous to to try and create an arrangement that meant that Northern Ireland was part of the Republic.
Right.
But who's to say? Who's to say?
Because I've heard so much, like when the first, I remember like a month after the Brexit vote, I was looking through the headlines and I've read like Scottish Nationalist Party, like saying we must do another like referendum and remain in the EU. Then like 2 months later, I have read like something about some people in London saying that London should secede as a city-state.
Yeah.
Like and remain in the EU.
I think that's in jest. I also saw some really funny stuff about some of the north of England seceding and joining Scotland.
So yeah, basically, like England just doesn't exist. Like after that,
even better if you could just whittle England down to the home counties. Like, you know what I mean?
We just whittle them down to Wessex and then just separate them on the borders that existed before the unification of England under Wessex, and we have Mercia, we have East Anglia, and all of them remain in EU except for Wessex because it's them to blame for that.
Those bastards, okay.
So Anglo-Saxons stay there, and the other Anglo-Saxon kingdoms remain in EU. But yeah, I'm really. What was about this no confidence vote, though? Okay, so is it basically something like a re-election they wanted to start?
Well, yeah, that's the ideal outcome. Like, so like a no confidence vote would trigger a general election. Like, the polls are quite tight at the moment. It's not clear that Labour would pull it out of the bag. But like, I presume Jeremy Corbyn would continue with Brexit as promised. Like, looking at some of the notes from Momentum's platform or whatever, it seems like it wouldn't just be some random Brexit. It'd be going back to the negotiating table, with a possibility for a second referendum if we can't agree on what kind of Brexit we're going to do. Like, all of that stuff's very reasonable. It would stop a horrible disaster, and that's great. But he didn't win his no confidence vote, did he? So
that's correct.
That kind of changes things, like, and like, I guess the parliamentary approach to that problem of him not winning is just to fucking wait around and do another no confidence vote on Theresa May's timeline, because I'm sure she knows that like, she's not going to be able to get a bill through Parliament for a no deal Brexit, like, or even her deal, like, which is close enough to no deal. Like, that's ridiculous. That's not going to happen. So I think the Labour Party has a responsibility to start building a mass movement, a protest movement that pulls the government from Parliament and replaces it with a Labour one. You know what I mean? I don't necessarily mean that in some kind of overly radical, bloodthirsty way, but we should be using the institutions of working class power to put pressure on this government to say, actually,
What
it's
exactly
time for
do
you.
you mean by that? Like, how would you imagine that? Because this is the question of, on the left, we always say mass movement, we say big, nice words, but like, what's from the practical standpoint? Because
That's a fair
it's
question,
possible,
right?
actually.
So, like, I'm gonna use an example. Is that a few weeks ago we had an anti-fascist protest in London,
Uh-huh.
largely headed by like the leftist liberal kind of Guardianista types, like so Owen Jones and those boys. Although there was a big, massive trade union involvement or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that pulls tens of thousands of people. Like, it pulled tens of thousands of people into the street. Like, that was pretty easy. Imagine what the leader of the opposition could pull onto the street. Like, Jeremy Corbyn has had the most engagement in the Labour Party of any leader of the Labour Party,
Yeah.
sitting or otherwise, in a very long time. Like, it would be so easy for him to mobilize his troops, as you say, and get them in the streets.
What was the word? Corbyn what? Corbyn grad? Something like that?
Yeah.
Corbyn
Corbyn
God?
grad.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that would be fantastic. That would be a pretty easy start. But I guess
Mm-hmm.
maybe the fear is that similarly to our comrades in France, things might hot up too quickly and go out of control. You know what I mean? Which I don't particularly have a problem with. But I imagine if you're trying to take a parliamentary approach, that would seem kind of dangerous and threatening to like the uncertainty of a French style Gilets jaunes kind of movement coming to prominence in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess kind of leads me. I didn't really answer your other question, did I?
Well, you
About
sort of
progress
answered
of
that. You
Watson.
explained what that means, and you've explained uh, that the Labour leader could easily pull people out, and I can see that. I would agree with you because, for example, Yellow Vests don't have an institution behind them, and I
No.
believe that's to their detriment. Because, in my opinion, the only way the left could actually achieve anything now is by combining parliamentarism and street action,
Yeah.
because ultimately, what's the result of Yellow Vests? Best case
An
scenario,
increase in minimum wage, or like a cancellation of unpopular taxes. Like, fucking great. Like, do you know what I mean? I don't really
yeah,
care
but
how we get that stuff as long as we
yeah,
get it, isn't it?
I don't think this is achievable without an institution. Like, oh, Glatex, our French comrade here, is saying that they are on the 10th week of protest, and we've talked about that. This is insane. This is like 10-week protest is just
It's
unimaginable.
kind of unusual, isn't it?
Yeah,
But
10 weeks.
as you say, there's a limit to the effectiveness of spontaneous protest. But like, in saying that, in France there is some wonderful left organizations squirreling
Mm-hmm.
away doing the hard work and organizing. Like was it 4 or 5 weeks ago? You saw that like the far right and the fascists are kind of having a waning influence. They're kind of being kicked out of the protest movement largely.
Mm-hmm.
Although, there's some stirrings from Marine Le Pen there recently. But, it just kind of shows that if you put in the work, like if the institutions of working class revolutionary movements actually gravitate towards the working class that they're supposed to represent,
Mm-hmm.
shit gets done. Like, as you
Yeah,
surprise, like, you know what I mean?
I would agree
But
with you. Mm-hmm.
like, I don't think we have that situation in Britain at the moment. So yeah, like the Yellow Vest movement in the UK, obviously every
Oh, yeah,
political movement going is trying to get a piece of that pie, like a piece of that good
yeah.
branding, isn't it? So like, I saw what are they called again? Are they called Extinction Rebellion? Like, those middle class libs or whatever, who are out in the streets to save humanity from climate change, but I don't know, carbon tax or something. Like, it's like largely unpopular. Like, they're essentially going out in the streets advocating for the thing that the Yellow Vests in France are rebelling against. Bizarre stuff. But anyway, like,
Amazing.
look, it was unpopular, but I think there's more legitimacy to the weird, like, pro-Brexit far right shit that is going on in the UK Yellow Vests. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not because the working class people that are involved are particularly inclined towards far right ideas. It's that the far right in the UK has cleverly gravitated correctly towards the populist politics of ordinary working people, and the left is fucking sitting around laughing at them. Like, do you know what I mean? Laughing at
Right.
the working class, essentially. Like that's a problem. Like, because when we don't get in there and do our jobs, like the fucking far right get in and do it straight away. Like, their finger is on the pulse. They know what they're doing. Like, and they could hijack that movement, and then who knows how far that they could successfully organize and what that could mean for the UK, what kind of danger that could represent in its own right. Couple that with a no-deal Brexit if we get one, and we're fucked. Like, we're absolutely fucked, because from a far right fascist perspective, like a chaotic, disorganized Britain is the exact kind of situation that you want. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to, on the left in the UK, we need to pull our fucking finger out and do the work. Like, you know what I mean? But yeah, so
I would
that's what
agree.
I wanted. That's what I wanted Jezzy to do, like, But he didn't actually respond to my tweets, so I don't know.
Not responding to your DMs.
Yeah, my DMs is yeah. He never does, actually.
Terrible.
Even on
Jezzy
Snapchat.
is awful. It just doesn't respond to your DMs at all.
Yeah. He never reposts my TikTok memes either, so.
Aww. It's just we need a re-election of the Labour leader. We need a Labour leader who responds to TikTok memes, TikTok, and he responds when I ask him to pick a character, to pick Tracer.
Yeah. As long as nobody's already Tracer.
Obviously. Exactly. That's very important for electability. Oh my God, I fucking hate this phrase. It's like a thing in the Labour Party, not electable or electability. We must think about being electable, which is like, hey, how about we be just like the neoliberals, let's do neoliberalism and that will work.
Yeah, well, that's what they mean, though. They don't mean that he's not electable. They mean he's like too radical. Like, for me, and probably for you, he's not radical enough. Like,
it's not radical at all. Like, he's just an old school Sogdem.
Yeah,
the ones who killed Rosa. He's the guy that killed Rosa.
Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong, he's a lovely one. Like, I'd love to bump into him down in his allotment, like tending to his cars. Like, he's like a lovely old British granddad. Like,
yeah.
But I guess that kind of brings up the limitations of what a social democracy can offer us. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yes, you use the parliamentary system where you can for certain ends, but largely the thing it's mostly good for is its platform, isn't it? And that's the bit that Corbyn is failing to use, because he's kind of afraid to use it.
Yeah.
He does have a massive kind of middle class base. Do you know like I spoke about them earlier, like, they're like the Extinction Rebellion people in a way, like, middle class Green Party people who, professional workers or whatever, with a pretty decent standard of living and nice, kind values or whatever. Yeah, like, that is part of his base in London, and they're the loudest in the media. Like, they're the only section of the working class that are ever really represented in media at all. Like, and yeah, so you can see why someone might gravitate towards those values if they're like limited by parliamentarism as an approach. Like, but it wouldn't take very much for him to get beyond that. Like, he has a platform, he just needs to use it. It would be.
I agree, because, like, if we look at his popularity, the numbers that he showed while being elected twice as Labour leader, basically, if I recall correctly, he was voted in once, and then they said, "Oh no, we shouldn't have him. Let's do it once again. Let's vote for the leadership." All of a sudden, he wins by a giant margin.
Massive. I voted both times.
So yeah, and we see that he managed to mobilize the Labour membership, and it's not just that, oh great, he can stay the leader of Labour. It means that he has trust of the actual membership, the actual members of Labour, the guys who went out and signed up got the fucking card, right? The fucking party membership card. The people who actually will be there in the streets. Right?
Exactly. Like the activists who do the fucking hard work of like building his profile and doing his job, and like those guys are great. They're amazing. Like I'm kind of a big fan of Momentum as well. Like, it has its limitations as an organization. Don't really need to get into it, but like, that is an important kind of thing to have. Like, and his existence kind of created that in a way. Like he mobilized people. All he needs to do is do that same thing again, but on a larger scale with a specific political goal in mind.
Yeah, and actually, that's one of the things that we sort of like started talking about British yellow vests, but in case of French yellow vests, I'm extremely skeptical about it. Like, I'm 100% supportive of it. I think it's a great indicator that the working class is still radical. It's still revolutionary in many ways. From many standpoints, from any critical like framework you take, working class is radical and is ready for the revolution. But
and we're
in my what?
And we're scary now as well. Like, you know, like
yeah,
no matter what happens, like I can see the leader, the Taoiseach in Ireland, Leo Varadkar. I can see him sideways glancing across to Macron with all those guillotine threats that he's getting, and thinking, that could happen to me in Ireland too. Like, you know,
yeah.
Like it wasn't that long ago that we were, you know, rounding up our landlords. Like, you know what I mean?
Actually, yeah.
And like that's important because we do kind of want them to be a bit afraid of us. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, the chat is accusing me of being a third worldist, or rather claiming I'm a third worldist. I'm a third worldist at heart because Jason Unruh is Bay forever. And you can't take that away from me. I love Jason Unruh. Shout out to Jason Unruh.
He's immensely entertaining anyway. I'll give him that.
Yeah. He did kill and rape his girlfriend in the 90s, but that's just another story that we just don't want to ever get into.
I didn't actually know that, but
actually we have no idea whether it's true. It's just the fucking thing that we saw.
CIA propaganda, is it?
Most certainly. It's the CIA propaganda.
Yeah.
We saw it online, like a blog, but it turns out he didn't, but like, or something like that. But it just literally said that Jason Unruh killed and raped his girlfriend in the 90s. How is anyone else supporting him and watching him on these YouTube videos? And I'm like, what the fuck? It is like,
I don't know whether that's true, but I would say largely most people don't support him anyway. So
yeah. He is a lot of many jokes, and I believe occasionally that's understandable, but sometimes it's just he's funny as fuck.
He exists. Probably his perspective is a bit narrow in my opinion. Like
but I'm not a third worldist because in my opinion, I just, based on what we have seen with Arab Spring, based on what we have seen with other mass movements with Ukraine, in my opinion, what's going to happen, and I talked to some of my friends and they sort of agree with me on that. Best case scenario is that Macron resigns. Most realistic scenario. It's not best case, it's most realistic. Macron resigns, and half or 3/4 of the crowd just goes home.
Yeah.
And somebody else, whoever gets voted in, maybe a left-leaning guy, like a left populist, right? And left populism is
what's his name?
Mélenchon?
Yeah,
if it was Mélenchon, it would be amazing because he's actually dank, in my opinion, from what I have seen. He's got his heart in the right place.
He's well fit, yeah.
Yeah, and let's actually say most of the crowd is kind of home. Yeah, they are. And the people who are, because it's popular, people are there, like, supporting it. It's popular in France, but, Mélenchon is bad. I don't know. How good he is.
That would be a good outcome. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's the danger of someone like Marine Le Pen getting in, but that's the game, isn't it? Like, our job as leftists is to organize and it's to beat the far right before they do. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like the first man to the ball gets to take the first shot, isn't it? So,
yeah, but in my opinion, that's a bad result for the Yellow West like movement because Macron gets out, great. What's next? Who's there to actually perpetuate the movement? Who's actually there to do the working class things, right?
Yeah.
It's really, in my opinion, a big problem that on one side you have a mobilized working class in Britain, right? Left wing, that is voting and that's supporting Jeremy Corbyn, and Corbyn is trying to do things in the parliament, and he speaks in a very passionate way. It's really great to listen to him talk, but he talks the talk where are the people in the street building a guillotine? And at the same time, we have France, which builds the fucking guillotine and ready to cut all the heads they can lay their hands on. like whatever, we don't fucking care. But there is no organized thing in the parliament actually representing the working class at the same time.
Yeah.
They don't need to be the part of the same organization. I don't think so. But there must be something on all levels, to work towards a common goal.
Well, like obviously the situation in France is kind of unsustainable in the long term. Like that's not going to go on forever.
Mm-hmm.
The best, and obviously the inspired leftist in me would imagine a best case scenario where that just evolves into a communist revolution. They do get out there and they grab their bourgeoisie and they use those guillotines. But that's also unlikely, and maybe kind of a misapplication of like Marxist ideas. It's like, I guess a revolution is more of a process than a single event. Regardless of whether we think that this is going to be the chopping of the heads of the bourgeoisie tomorrow morning, it is a good thing in its own right, simply because it's an expression of political will, which can be transferred into something. You know what I mean? You can do political work with political energy. And some of that will dissipate if Macron gets ousted or whatever, but it's still an opportunity for leftists to do work and to build. And that's all we can do. Like we hope for the revolution tomorrow, but we build for the revolution eternally. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I actually have, I completely agree with you on your perception of what communism is, a movement. And I have my favorite quote that is literally that by Marx, who literally says that.
What's the quote?
Communism is for us not a state of affairs which is to be established, an ideal to which reality will have to adjust itself. We call communism the real movement which abolishes the present state of things. The conditions of this movement result from the premises now in existence. So communism is not this utopia that's waiting to happen. And that's one of the biggest representations, not representations, but like misinterpretations of Marx that's done by the right-wingers, They just tell utopians, blah, 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 right? He says here that it's a movement. It's a thing that we do, right? It's not a thing that we are trying to achieve. It's a thing that we do. And people who are wanting the revolution to happen tomorrow, and they imagine like 1917, with storming the palace and passionate speeches in front of the crowds. No, that's not how it happens. And the thing that happened in 1917...
Maybe, or if it is, that's not what's going to happen right now. Or if it is, it still doesn't negate the fact that we have to put the work in. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Like 1917 is a great example of the thing that was so long in the making. Like so much stuff led to that event to actually occur.
Like you can't even separate it as like two events in Russia. Like it's funny again to bring Rosa Luxemburg up, but you'd have to talk about Germany as well, and and the conditions of the entirety of Europe following World War One, and like the growth of working class institutions everywhere. I think you're absolutely right.
There is so much stuff that led to it. For many idealists, if you put an idealist leftist who's boiling with red revolutionary passion today on Twitter, and you put him in 1905 in Russia, or let's say 1890, and he's like, yes, the revolution is around the corner. We just need to get all the peasants who are in servitude and lead them to the peasant revolt and Pugachev, and we'll do that. Well, one of the reasons why revolution actually happened was the fact that the serfdom was abolished, and it sort of and it gave a breath of fresh air, an opportunity for a change for people. But then it put people into this. It allowed them to go out of it, right? But they had to pay to get out of it. And they had to get out loans. They had to work for 20 years on their lord's land to pay them back, to pay back and stuff like that. So, and that's all contributed to the material conditions of the 1905 first, and then the first revolution, and the third revolution. 3 fucking revolutions to actually do something that could be considered a socialist rule, right?
Yeah, and then we didn't even get it in the end, actually.
Yeah. Because, whatever your opinion on the Soviet Union, was it socialist, was it not socialist, right? Bourgeoisie is now in charge of Russia and my country.
Yeah.
They are here.
So
I live in a post-failed revolutionary state of Belarus.
A beautiful quote that a longtime friend of mine, Comrade Keen Prendeville, he was a councillor in Limerick City. He's a very committed socialist.
Mm-hmm.
He said he told me before that the first light bulb lit only for a few seconds. The first light bulb ever designed. And I think that's the way to look at the Soviet Union. Fuck it, it didn't work, but it's their job to just keep trying until we get what we need.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
And it's been too long coming. You know what I mean? It can be frustrating.
Yeah.
We're developing more and more history, more and more lessons about how to build socialism or communism, and we still never seem to get it. But what can you do? It's a job that needs to be done.
That's very accurate, and that's a very good attitude. I think it's still great. It's still, it's not the communism that was the treasure. It was comrades they found along the way.
It's funny you should say that, right? So, was it yesterday? Yes, it was. So on Saturday, it was the anniversary of Mark Fisher. He wrote, "Go to My Life and Capitalist Realism," which we sell on Zero Books. I was studied under him in university in UL.
Oh, really?
Stratford. Yes, I did. I was very lucky. Just for 1 year, he was our lecturer, and I was lucky enough to get close with him as well. He was an amazing dude.
Great.
So Jodie Dean did a memorial lecture in Goldsmith College yesterday, and it was absolutely fantastic. And one of the key takeaways was she talks about this idea of comradeship. And the importance of comradeship. I think she's writing a book about it for Versa or whatever. But yeah, it is the comrades we make on the way. What we're doing is we're transforming social relations through material relations. It's the comradeship is kind of the goal in a weird way. Yeah.
I believe that actually our Lord and Savior Douglas Lane mentioned on one of the videos that for a very long time in the leftist circles, there was this really terrible, it's still there, this framework to perceive our lives through revolution or suicide.
Yeah.
It's either we make it or why the hell are we even here? And he provided an example of Guy Debord, who committed suicide in the 70s after the Situationist thing just fell apart. And that's a scary thing, that if you think about it, if your world outlook is based on critique, right, which for most leftists it is critique, then when it creates a very, very difficult situation for mental health and for your own goals in life. When your goal in life is to change the world, what the fuck? How, if you fail, that's it.
That's it. Yeah, you're stuck with it, and it's unbearable.
Yeah, and so it is a question that we should answer as individuals, as a group, as a group of people that are actively engaged in the movement. Is how do we change that perception? And I think comrades as we get along the way is one of the answers.
Yeah, I think so too. I really like that sentiment. So one fantastic thing about Facebook and social media is that there now exists this kind of digital left. It's a useless, neutered, unusable thing, but it exists. You know what I mean?
All right.
But I kind of feel that it's coming to that point, that comradeship as a thing and people just treating each other properly is slowly starting to emerge after years of what I like to call Harry Potter sorting hat leftism, isn't it?
What do you mean by that? Is it just
you know the way it's good crack to say that you hate tankies or anarchists or social democrats,
right?
Or obviously we have to hate liberals. I mean, that's great crack altogether. It's good crack hating on Trotskyists and making ice pick jokes. It's it's really good fun hating on Stalinists for being for worshipping ideologues or whatever. But at the end of the day, those movements are over. It is 2019. We're a bunch of people communicating with each other on social media, watching the world burn around us. We're not part of radical movements that have these kind of ideological splits or shifts. we're not debating over tactics in terms of those specific nuanced approaches to philosophy. We're just trying to figure out the basics and get the fucking ball rolling, really, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
like, I'm not saying that, like, I hate it when people talk about division in the left as if it's some accidental thing. The task is monumental, obviously. Like, what we're trying to achieve is really difficult. And that means that there needs to be debates on tactics. And ultimately, sometimes there will be disagreements that are inevitably splitting, kind of, like ideas that create division. But we're not at that point. Like, we can be comradely to each other now. Like, we can build a left that consists of these different kind of houses in Harry Potter, like, that work together. And the reason I like that analogy is because obviously for J.K. Rowling, like, that was representative of like the ruling classes' allegiances to each other based on the different ideologies or whatever. So we need to do it in return.
Yeah.
But it's like, I like Trotsky. I read a lot of Trotsky, but it's kind of hard to be a Trotskyist when the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore, isn't it? Like what does that critique was relevant at that period in time and was useful then, perhaps, maybe, based on my like staring into the past to a time period I wasn't alive for. But like, should it shape my interactions with other comrades that I meet at the moment, who are few and far between in terms of the general population already? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
and actually, it reminds me of a very interesting thing, because when you said that, I was thinking like, yeah, we are thinking about history too much, and we are basically unconsciously, I mind you, it's not that like people are wasting their time, unconsciously role playing the dead movements. Yeah, but I must say that in many ways, people who are LARPing are accusing others to be LARPers.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to actually understand that what you're doing is not really helpful. But at the same time, suddenly, Richard Spencer quote came to mind. We shall not, he was referring to the alt-right movement, we shall not be overburdened by history. And that's what he said about basically Nazi apology and associations with Hitler.
Yeah.
And I was like,
of course, like, that is a winning strategy in a way, like, so.
For them, but I don't think this is our way, though. Well, like that's the point.
Who was it? No, was it Badman that did a video on the word communism there recently?
Yeah, he recently made a video about that.
Yeah, that was really, really good, actually. Like, like to some degree, like the historical connotations of our movement are like massively important. Like it is the history of us as a working class attempting to build the society that we deserve in a way. And like you can't throw that away. Like, yeah, we need to kind of redefine certain parts of it, but not using different language. Like, you know what I mean?
Yes, I completely agree with that.
We redefine communism by making people understand what we mean when we say it, not by using a different word to articulate it, isn't it?
I agree with you, because it's so wrong to reject our history, because that's our history. That's our history as radicals. That's our history as working class people. Yeah. It's our history as citizens of our countries, even, because that's our movements that happened, right? And rejecting them for this or that reason would be not only intellectually dishonest, but also detrimental to our success ultimately.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, we have to find a way to deal with that, because that's a thing that, like, in leftist circles, mostly in like post-Soviet Union, but beyond it as well, there is this process of, I've learned what socialism and communism is. Well, I don't like Stalin, so I will be a Trotskyist or I will be an anarchist.
Yeah.
And, like, I've heard a very good definition of like first-year anarchists, or like first month anarchists, I must say, communism without Stalin. Like, that's what it is. Like, it's just that, but without the bad stuff, you know? I don't like, nobody likes the bad stuff. Let's do that.
Like, you want to get rid of the bad stuff, have less of it. Yeah, like, you can understand that sentiment, though, isn't it? It's like I guess I'm kind of lucky that I come from a radical-ish family or whatever. Like, Like my grandfather moved to the United Kingdom when he was a young man, and he eventually was education officer for the Communist Party in Great
Oh,
Britain. But like
interesting.
imagine for some people, like, well, for most people, I can tell because of I've had to try and advocate for it. But like, communism is a dirty word. It is, and like that's difficult to face as an individual because under capitalism, like our identities are forged by what we believe. Like we're like a brand. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you don't want to be branded with the bad thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you want to.
Management is important all of a sudden.
Yeah. So it's like an understandable sentiment. But unfortunately for us, we gotta just accept the bad stuff as well. Like it's part of our history. Do you know what I mean?
Ah,
It doesn't escape.
because there's nothing more powerful than saying, "What are you talking about? I'm a communist" on BBC.
Yeah.
Like,
Queen.
yes, it's so amazing that actually, I remember reading somewhere that fascists, online and beyond, are ultimately internally extremely jealous of communists, of our aesthetic, of
That's
our
because we're
history.
fucking cooler than they are as well. Like, do you know
Well,
what I mean?
what? Come again?
We're much cooler than they are too. Like,
Yeah, like,
because we have friends. Like, we don't have a small pool of like identically sunburnt white dudes that don't even like each other, hanging out with each other. Yeah.
oh my god. Equal distribution of suntan and amount of sex, and this is
Yeah,
how you separate the right wing. Like a lot of sex, not a lot of sex, and everyone lies in between.
yeah.
But yeah, like we have so much aesthetic, we have so much history, so much stuff, and it's all encompassed in one word. And when you pronounce it, it raises eyebrows, right? But it gives you a chance to actually let you speak your truth, because we're not here. We're not religious people who are running around and telling you must like accept Christ and accept Marx as your Lord, and you must follow this religious book and not question it. No, we have issues. We have our opinions on what to do with this issue, with that issue. How do we approach that problem?
Yeah.
Stop wars, do this, expand worker rights, direct stuff, and that we all encompass under the word, communist. And we recorded an episode of our podcast today, and there we talked about like different ways people can get into politics. And I'm going to repeat myself from that unreleased episode and quote a very interesting Trotskyist newspaper, socialistworker.org. And it's an American, I think it's an international organization, but I think those guys they're from Chicago. And
Okay.
they were telling basically a case study of an organized workspace, how they organized a hospital in Chicago. And they were saying that a person who did that was approached by one of the co-workers, and basically this person, the organizer, was really open about their radical beliefs, and they were like, you know what, I don't really agree with you on the socialism stuff, but you're a really good organizer.
Yeah.
And they respond by saying, well, I'm a good organizer because I'm a socialist.
Yeah.
And
That's great.
people laughed at that. Like, this person didn't understand why, because it just doesn't make sense for a person who's away from politics, who's not really know what socialism is and who are the communists, right?
No, yeah, it's done through practice or praxis,
Yeah,
however you call it.
and that's a great example of that.
Yeah.
That was literally defining ourselves by not our history but our actions, without rejecting the history, without rejecting our traditions and practice. So I think we have a great chance to actually do better in this regard. I don't think this is a lost cause. Like the word communism and our movements, it's going to, if we work hard, if we actually do the work, and it's going to be great. It's going to be good, I think.
I like your optimism. Like,
Yeah.
like I always operate on the basis of as if I'm optimistic or whatever. But personally, I think we'll probably get very close to successfully organizing like a really super all-powerful left, and then we'll die from an environmental disaster just before we get a chance to.
That's a possibility, though. Possibility.
I think it's one of the most likely outcomes. Like,
oh my god!
But what are you going to do? Like, you know?
Yes, we have to do our best in the framework of the that we're provided with.
Like, you don't just give up and drown. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, try to swim. We'll build communism with the our underwater comrades. We'll just get Posadas out. We'll just get Posadas out.
The dolphins, yeah.
Yeah, just like the dolphin communism. That's what we're
maybe we're wasting your time. Like, all we need is just some dolphins, a few nukes, boom, problem solved.
And again, for the 100th times on EML, we came to Posadism as the definite response to any of our problems that the left faces.
I don't think it's a coincidence. Like, you know, it is the particular faction within communist thought that I hold in the highest esteem.
Yeah. That's why I think Jeremy Corbyn is a failure for the left ultimately. He once had a public debate and he was asked, "Would you launch nukes at Iran?" Remember that?
Yeah, and he said no.
And he was like saying that we should prevent the situation completely. We shouldn't do that.
Nuke the world. Like, yeah.
Yes, and I remember H-Bomber guy who was making a video about that made an amazing like parody of that. Would you kill millions, Jeremy? Jeremy, tell me, would you kill millions? Jeremy, I want blood. That's what ultimately at heart of the working people. Good old nuclear holocaust and
like
everywhere.
That's what people really want, isn't it?
Yeah, and aliens.
When you get down to the deep, darkest kind of Freudian desires. Like that's what fuels it all. Nuke me, daddy.
Great. Oh, so we're approaching our time to finish this whole thing. Do you have anything else to add to maybe a topic that we didn't talk about? Because I have all the evening, I have all the night to talk about. Is there anything else that we missed?
I guess I didn't really talk about how the left would intervene into something like the Yellow Vest movement.
Yeah, actually, let's talk about that because how can we do that? Like
it links into what I was saying before. So someone like Jeremy Corbyn, he needs to embrace his Brexit supporting working class backing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no getting away from it. Like, I think what we want to be doing is like advocating for a nice Brexit now. Like, that's the most realistic outcome, or at least like a delayed Brexit to the point that it's indistinguishable from no Brexit or whatever, and then we just get on with it and start building fucking hospitals and houses and shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think that would be close enough.
The money birds come back. Shout out to H-Bomber guy again.
Say again?
The money birds will come back. It's a video again by H-Bomber guy, and there was an ad by UKIP where they said we're sending millions every day, blah blah blah. And it shows like if we do the Brexit, and then like the money was flying from Europe to London and building a hospital. Like that's the money birds came back from Brussels again.
Building hospitals, yeah. Exactly. So if we can just bring those money birds back home and start building hospitals, nobody will care. Do you know what I mean? Like working class people do want political autonomy and a voice or whatever, and they don't feel that they're getting that through the European Union, but they also want fucking healthcare. Like, you know, they want jobs that don't pay shit money to the point that you can't pay your fucking rent. You know, they definitely don't want food shortages anyway, I tell you that. But so like the reason lots of kind of middle class leftists were laughing at the Yellow Vests in the UK is like, don't get me wrong, there's like the fascists are hanging around that shit, like they're swarming around it like flies, like vultures even. And I don't blame them. They're right to do it. That there's a perfect opportunity for them to legitimize their shitty politics. Like, but so like there was one photo that was up online for a long time. It was a list of really poorly inarticulated demands, and they were kind of inconsistent. It was like I might actually pull it up. I have the internet in front of me. I'm sure if I look up Yellow Vest demands. I
think I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, like, so it's a sheet of A4 paper, like a bit of a graphic design is my passion situation. But, yeah, I can't see it here now. Doesn't matter. But the demands were stuff like more support for our boys, like ending the uncontrolled power of the banks, blah blah. It's like a bunch of weird populist demands mixed in with each other that were really inconsistent. And then at the bottom it was like, what does this all mean for you? But the grammar was terrible. It looked really ugly.
Oh yes, what does Yellow West mean? And it's like support our boys. Yeah, like uncontrollable. It sounded like they were wanted uncontrollable banks to like control everything. It was so
I've
badly
found it, I believe.
Yeah.
You feel it's like justice for our boys. Like it's also like Brexit, child abuse, abuse of children.
Oh, abuse of children. What does it support? Yes, I remember that.
Like, it is kind of funny in a loose sense. But, like these kind of inarticulated fucking problems are stuff that we need to be answering. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, okay, justice for our boys. Like, I'm sure you probably guess I'm not a massive fan of the British military, as an institution, like as an agent for British imperialism, not my favorite organization. Like, but I do understand that it consists largely of working class people who've been duped into doing it because it's like a way to get money or to get access to education. And I do understand that when they come back with fucking their arms and legs blown off, that their mums don't like it. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, that's fucking fair enough. Like, there is a left-wing answer for that problem. Like, I'm sure you'll find some nutcase super tanky online that will say that the left-wing answer is like fucking death to all soldiers or some shit. But we know that the answer is a bit more nuanced. Like, we know.
Yes, and if we go to the super tankies, I must direct people to Lenin and what Lenin wrote about and what he did. Interesting fact about this famous hand gesture when you lift your fist up in the air, right? Red salute, they say it, right? You know how it's called in Germany and in Eastern Europe? A rot front, which is from German, it's red front, and that was a salute. It was called that after a movement in mostly in Germany that was organizing the soldiers on the front lines to support the Communist Party and overthrow the British Empire and establish socialism, bring our boys back, and ask the boys to bring the rifles with them, basically.
I know that lots of communists believed in joining the army specifically to advocate for communism, like, which is a fucked up brave thing to do. Like, I don't think that's the situation now. Like, sure, they mostly use fucking drones anyway. Like, but
yeah, but that's the thing. That's the thing that we did. That's the thing that left did. We organized the military.
Like, I just think working class people aren't responsible for the fucking wars that they make us fight. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like, soldiers may as well be reactionary. The culture around the army may as well be like extra reactionary and awful and misogynistic and homophobic and whatever, right? All of this is true. But at the same time, these are working class people.
Yeah. Like, I want soldiers to come back and have access to healthcare and education and childcare. Exactly. And like, the
full name of the worker Soviets that a lot of tankies fetishize was the councils, the worker and soldier councils.
Yeah,
because it was a very important issue at the time, the imperialist war. So I think that we should reject institutions, but we shouldn't reject the people.
No,
we should support the army or the police, but if there are people in those institutions who are understanding why we are against the institutions and they're like, I agree with you, I want to fight with you against this sort of shit, right? Yeah. They should be joining. We should be allowing them to join.
Even if they don't want us, right? Even if they want nothing to do with it, even if they have loads of stupid reactionary beliefs as a result of being in the army, right? Like, those are people's children and neighbors in working class communities. And when they have their arms blown off, it's horrible for everyone in that community. It's a perfect opportunity for us to make the case against imperialism, like perpetual war and the exploitation of young people or whatever. It's like an easy one for the left. We already have the fucking answer. Second item on the agenda was Brexit. Like, we spoke a bit about that. Child abuse, pretty handy. But you know what I mean? like it's easy for leftists to talk about child abuse. We're against it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, homelessness, veteran suicide, false adoption. I don't really know what that means, but like,
Forced
yeah,
adoption.
it's like incoherent. It doesn't point in the same place. Corrupt police, corrupt politicians, fake news, fake laws, greedy bankers, corrupt government. Like, those are things that leftists can talk about. Like, fucking the right wingers don't give a shit. Like, you know what I mean? They start wars. Like, they want wars. They pretend they don't. I guess people like Richard Spencer are very good at pretending to be kind of insular, like opposed to unnecessary war or whatever. But like, these demands are easy for us. This is our home territory. We should be out there with those working people, and they should be listening to us because we have something to say on that. And the fact that we're not doing it means is a mistake. Like, it's a massive tactical mistake. The fact that we're allowing middle-class people to laugh at them is a big tactical mistake as well. You can see why it happens, but yeah, fuck those guys. We don't need them.
I agree. It reminds me of what Zizek said, is that the left wing used to be like this cool hippie, you know, anti-establishment, you know, and very like vulgar and whatever. He said that we must return to the times where we sound like the reasonable ones.
Yeah,
because the right
fucking finger wagging sermons, like, you know what I mean? Finger wagging sermons, as Mark Fisher would say.
Yeah, like we should position ourselves as the people who are like decent people who want decent things to happen to everyone. Like, just
like I don't know how anyone could even laugh at those demands. Like, I picked apart the grammar as well. Also, it's phrased in a stupid way as well. Like, it's like it says that they stand for those things because they.
We stand for child abuse. I remember. It's
I get it. They fucked it. Like, but it, like, you know, you can't just go around laughing at working people for having shit education. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the fact that middle class people have it instead is a luxury. You know what I mean? It's not.
Yeah.
Not right. It's not leftist to laugh at people for that either. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
I agree. Oh, so last question before I let you go. The chat is asking you asked to talk about Falklands. What's your opinion on Falklands, Badman?
Falklands?
Yeah.
I actually don't know.
Thank you very much.
Do I have an opinion on that, actually?
Because, for some reason, the chat is worried about Falkland Islands and like, how did they vote? Are they going to stay in the EU? Is Falkland Republican movement spurring up? That's the question I have.
That's something I'm going to have to look into. I actually, to my shame, I don't know.
Same, I have no idea what's happening on those little islands.
Yeah. Like, does Brexit mean Brexit for them? I don't know. Like, I'll Google it later.
And another question from the chat. Are you a brocialist?
Absolutely, yeah. No, I'm only joking. Obviously, I get up early so that I can respect women for longer. You know?
This is very good. Thank you very much for your respectful.
I'm opposed to people being brocialists. Like I'm not a massive fan of kind of the identity politics that's kind of infected some of the more liberal middle class elements of left wing culture, but like, not being shitty to women and trans people and people of color is like a basic fucking fundamental building block of comradeship, and not doing it makes you a piece of shit. Like, do you know what I mean? So, yeah. Like, I think everyone knows that anyway. Like I think
this question comes after your video about criticizing intersectional theory. Yeah, and I watched it, and you were very careful in the choice of words, in my opinion.
Absolutely, like, because I don't want to just fucking be like, oh, actually, do you know what, lads? We can just do whatever the fuck we want, isn't it? Like, we can just like reinforce the kind of shitty power structures that that like lock people out of our movements. Because that's no good either. Like, you know, we need everyone on board with this project, or it's going to fail. And if we're going to start bullying each other and keep people locked out, nobody's going to want to be in our organizations, and they won't function.
Yeah, because ultimately, I think that a right position here would be to, like, we don't disagree, you know, with people. For example, people who are who are saying that they are like intersectionalists, right? We don't disagree with them completely. Like, no disagreement with what they're saying, right? Yes, patriarchy exists, right? Misogyny is terrible and is a thing that exists. It's in culture. It's in the institutions. We must abolish the oppressive institutions, right?
Yeah.
The question is, how do we approach it from a theoretical standpoint? This is where disagreements start ultimately. I think that we should at least agree that we agree on things, and then we can go deep into the theoretical debates and debate what framework it is better to critique the things, from.
Well, I think the problem is on our end, though, too. Do you know what I mean? It's like, Marxism is a good material, or like a good way to like philosophically understand the world in a certain way, right?
Right.
What it doesn't tell you is it doesn't give you the rules about what the kind of social mechanics of the organizations we build should look like. Do you know what I mean? But that doesn't mean that we have no tradition of that in communist thought. We fucking absolutely do. I'm gonna and to reference Jody Dean again. I think comradeship and the idea of the comrade as a thing is where that lives. Like that's the solution for that intellectual problem on the left.
I agree, and I believe that it's really a thing that we should be careful with, right? On any side, people who are accusing others of being brocialists and vice versa, because it's really easy, and I mostly blame, like in most cases that I have personally seen, people who are being accused of being brocialists are actually fucking something up.
Yeah,
like they are, and I just think that we should be careful about what sort of stuff we're doing. We should be thinking about what sort of stuff, how we're expressing our opinions, and trying to understand that we are not enemies of each other, and we are all here for the same purpose. We're here to figure out what the fuck are we supposed to do with all the shit that will exist in.
And we're allowed to get it wrong as well. Do you know, like, to my brocialist comrades, I'm sure there's tons of you out there, like you can just stop fucking doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'll work with you. Like, I'll fucking, I don't know, go to demos and hand out leaflets with you. Like, like, I'll still work with you, but you just need to stop doing that. Like, do you know what I mean? And like, that's kind of a culture that we need to build too, is that we can get it wrong and then just fucking, learn and not be wrong.
Yeah.
And it's actually just part of human life anyway, isn't it? It's like we all start out socially awkward and shitty when we're young, and we get marginally better at it and more empathic as we get older. Like,
yeah, exactly. That's why, that's why many of those MGTOW people and pickup artist people sound so as if they're teenagers in older people bodies. It's
in terms of their social development, they are, and in some fucked up way that isn't necessarily their fault either. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, they're the product of the alienation that capitalism creates. So,
Yeah, I still think
we can counteract that.
Come again?
We can counteract that by building lovely organizations that people want to be in because it's for a greater good.
Like take a look at Rouge V. He literally had to apologize for being interested in baking bread. Remember that?
I watched that H Bomber guy video on it, I think, or was it?
Yeah.
Of tweets? I can't remember.
He said that he said that he made a video where he was talking about baking, and he said that it's a science and things. Yes, and that shows to me that it's a person that doesn't understand that he's allowed to like things that he likes.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's funny because I like baking for the same reason as Rouge V. Like, I just have a little different take on it or whatever. Like, baking is a science, but it's cool because it's like a really gay science.
I mean,
that's what I like about it. Yeah.
Oh my god, amazing. I think that's a great point to finish with. We should all pick up baking because it's a great gay science to be interested in.
Like that.
Yeah.
Can I plug some stuff for Zero? Is that
great? Cool? Plug anything you want. What you have?
So we have a video out at the moment. It's called "Can There Be an SJW Left?" an anti-SJW left. I made the thumbnail for it, but I didn't have anything to do with the editing. But take a look at it. And then we've got Elliot Rosenstock. He's one of our authors, and he's going to do He's going to do some stuff soon, which I am going to edit. And then hopefully I should have a spicy takes for you at some point in the next few weeks. Yeah, so that's basically it.
That sounds great. Well, everyone, if you're not subscribed to Zero Books, then what the fuck you're doing on email? You're wasting your life. You should go there 100% and get that cultural Marxism like directly plugged into your brain.
Mainlined.
Yes, this is the main tube of cultural Marxism on YouTube. This is where it's all like begins. So you could easily plug yourself in and wash your brain clear of all the Christian truth and become a godless communist that you really are deep inside.
And we can all start working together to finally build that cult of personality around Douglas Lane as well.
Yeah, I think that's important. We should come back another time. We should talk about this in more detail. About cult of personality of Douglas Lane.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, follow Badman Massive on Twitter at Badman Massive, and follow me everywhere. All the links are down below. I'm going to put the link to the YouTube channel also in the description, or Zero Books, so that you can follow that as well. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. This was Bolshevik Bistro. Is there anything else you need to plug? Is that it?
I just wanted to say I really enjoyed the chat. I'd love to do it again at some time.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it as well tremendously. So yeah, people, thank you again very much. Thank you, chat. You should join our Discord if you haven't. We're heading out there occasionally. So yeah, thank you very much. See you in the next one. Bye, everyone.
Good night, comrades.